All right, we're flowing.
Hello,
Tara
hello.
with her Beyonce fan blowing.
I have, this is normally on my treadmill, but I wanted to turn my air conditioning off last night and open the windows, but it has resulted in being a little bit hot in my office.
No, it's a good look. Looks like you're about to hit the
It is a good
stage.
look. Yeah,
I am. I'm on stage right now.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Well, we should pause for a second because I realize not everybody watches the video, so they're going to be like, "Who's that voice?" Although, having said that, it's going to be in the title. So,
Yes.
if unless you've clicked on this and not looked at the title, in which case, more fool you. We have a guest to introduce.
I'm going to introduce her.
That's what you do.
Yes. This came together from something that you and I have talked about before on another podcast where I was standing in the coffee shop of my brother and sister-in-law at the Stone Bean in Basking Ridge, a place that would not exist if I didn't go through a divorce and everything else. So all of these things leading up.
Yeah.
Maya was there. Maya Yatom, who is joining us today, was there as a coach who is got some exciting things going on with her business. Her and I connected. And as the world would have it, it's a big, small world out there. She lives in the same township as Ben. And we said, we have to get together. We have to walk. And like two true coaches committed to their word, we texted each other. And before you know it, we were walking our tootsies down the street to the local bakery, chatting about a million and one things. She gave me different perspective and made me think a little bit differently, which, isn't always that common when you do things like coaching and podcasting with
Mm-hmm.
your daily life. So I just thought, my gosh, you've got to be on the podcast. And this is also, I don't know, dare I say it? We're taking her podcast virginity today. She's never been on a podcast before.
That's true.
Nice. We
Yeah.
did that with Amy as well, right?
Yes, we did. I mean, just these amazing people, but amazing women and men as well. But that I'm like, how have you not been on a podcast before? So we're really honored to welcome Maya today. And there's no better person to tell her in a nutshell than herself.
All
So
right.
welcome, and please share with our guest kind of who you are and some of the things that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and not gonna lie, very nervous. Like you said, my first time on a podcast, and certainly on a podcast that's on YouTube as well. So got the visual and audio virginity going on here. Yeah, so I am an ADHD coach, which basically means I'm a life coach with the perspective of neurodiversity in the world. So that can be whether you're a parent who has neurodiverse children, whether you're a parent who's neurodiverse themselves, a professional in functioning as a neurodivergent in a neurotypical world, or a neurotypical manager who has neurodiverse employees. I work with students as well, entering or going through their educational process as a neurodivergent person in a neurotypical world. Yeah, so that's my my perspective on things. And my perspective as a neurodivergent person and a neurodivergent parent, but also as a coach who focuses on neurodiversity.
For those of us who aren't familiar with these terms, and
Yeah.
self-admittedly, these are new terms that have come to me recently. Can you give a little bit of a description or an explanation of what neurodiversity means? And I heard you saying a non-typical world,
A
repeat that?
neurotypical world. Yeah.
Neurotypical world. Yeah. So
Yeah.
let's get everybody on the same page of what the heck does that mean?
Sure. So the way that I like to think about neurodiversity is much like neurodiversity in nature. So, in order for a forest to really thrive, you have to have biodiversity. you have to have different types of plants and different types of animals who function differently, grow at different rates, excel at different things, in order to make a successful forest. Um, that's true for human diversity as well. So the way it comes, the way it works with neurodiversity, neuro referring to brain, um, we have brains that work in different ways. Under the neurodiversity umbrella is everything from neurotypical brains through ADHD, autism, um, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, or dyscalculia. There's so many different things that fall under the umbrella of neurodiversity because neurodiversity includes everything. Now, being neurodivergent means that you don't fall under neurotypical. In terms of kind of what that, when I speak about a neurotypical world, I liken it to thinking about feminism. So I know that you guys had an episode kind of talking about the differences between men and women and the fact that there is place for both and all the differences that come with it. Where the feminist movement comes in is the world for the majority of human life as we know it was very much focused on kind of like a male dominated world. So the workplace, there's a lot of there wasn't much room for a focus on women and women's strengths. So the neurotypical world is much like that, where schools, workplaces, health systems, all of these things are built around a neurotypical brain. How neurotypicals function in the world, how neurotypicals communicate and learn, and all of these things. And then when you bring in the neurodiverse perspective, then you're bringing in different ways of thinking. So making sure that there's room for the way that ADHDers communicate, the way that autistics communicate, a place for someone with dyslexia, for example, to manage the bureaucracy of a health system, and so on and so forth. So that's the idea of neurodiversity and creating a world that is more neurodiversity affirming. I think I might have gone on a little bit more of a tangent there, but I hope that helped explain some of what you were asking.
It explained it for me, and it's actually one of the things I'm most excited about AI for, because I think it's going to open a lot of opportunities for the neurodiverse way of learning. And as we were saying before the show, my youngest is on the spectrum with autism, and my oldest has I wouldn't say ADHD, but it's some kind of processing disorder. And I don't even like saying disorder. He just processes things differently. And I remember when he was in second or third grade, I kind of blew up in a meeting during his IEP, and I'm like, this kid can figure out professional grade music software, navigate his way through it, figure out how to teach him in a way that he understands, because he can clearly learn things. It's just the way you're teaching it is not correct. And I think, unfortunately, the school system is built for neurotypical kids. And I think if we were really to pare it down, there's probably about I don't want to say 50%, but a huge portion of those kids actually don't learn, quote unquote, typically. So, if we were to kind of look at schools, because I know we have a lot of parents that listen, if we were to kind of see a change in how they teach in school, what would be some of the things you would encourage incorporating, or things you've experienced in your practice?
Yeah. Oh
And
my goodness.
background.
Yeah.
She has an education background.
Yeah. I do have education background. That's where I come from. So I think one of the things that's really important to consider is that the more we incorporate special education for within general education, everyone benefits.
Yeah.
The less we incorporate, the more people don't benefit. So an example, a really simple example of creating a, a neurodiversity affirming classroom. And this is really something very, very basic. So alternative seating for many children, sitting in an upright position in a chair for many hours is physically hard, but cognitively impossible. So if you want children to actually hear and process and learn, they often need to be able to move their body, because if their whole focus is on, am I sitting straight in the chair? Am I making noise? Am I behaving in a way that's not appropriate? That's where their focus is. They're not focusing on learning. And so creating a classroom where that has alternative seating with simple things like wobble pillows that don't make any noise and cost very little. Things like stretch bands that you put under the chair for the kids to be able to kick and move. Building in lots of movement breaks. Allowing kids to sit in different spaces. So saying, for example, we all start the class in our chairs, but when we transition to working on our own, then we have all these different ways that you can sit. If a child wants to sit under the table, let them sit under the table. If the child wants to sit in the corner, kind of in their little in a little nook while they're listening, but they don't have eyes on them and that makes them more comfortable, let them. Allow those places that focus on what the child needs, and always ask yourself, why not? Why not is my favorite question. When something comes up, we often jump to no because that's not how things are done, or because then everybody's going to want it. First of all, normally they won't. And even if they do, then they might want it for like 5 minutes and then the excitement wears off and they go back to what's comfortable for them. And if everybody wants it, then maybe the way that we're sitting is not right. And that goes for listening as well. Every time my kids start with a new teacher, the first thing that I tell them is that they have a choice with my kid, whether they want them to look like they're listening or they want them to listen. You can't have both. Because if they look like they're listening, that means that all that they're focused on is, am I looking at the right place? Is my body positioned well? What am I doing with my hands? I can feel my sock. Should I be feeling my sock? Whereas if they're focused on your words and they don't have to think about whether they're listening, then they can have something, as I always have 100 fidgets at my desk. They can have something that they're playing with. Their hands are busy, so their ears can listen and they can process. So trying to think, what is my goal in this lesson? And if what the child needs can be supported, then why not? If you can answer why not, then explain it to the child and problem solve together. If not, let them do it. Why not is it really, like I said, it's my favorite question.
What would your counterpoint be? And I'm playing devil's advocate here because I
Oh,
completely agree
please.
with you. But to the teacher or whoever says, well, it's distracting to the other kids, the neurotypical kids. It's
Yeah.
that kind of behavior is distracting to them, or it's a bad influence. Let's say, what would be the response to that?
Yeah. So it's such a good question, because so many teachers are, and having spent time in a classroom, I can understand that, a fear of the classroom losing control, or I don't want to take care of this one kid and take everything away from the other kids. And so I think it's kind of a case by case. Um, and then the question is, so what is it that we're looking for? So if um I'm trying to think of like a helpful example. So it really depends on what it is the child needs. A child who needs to fidget, or a child who's talking all the time, a child who's um, moving around, and then they're already disrupting the class, right? So either they're disrupting the class or you're not teaching them. Both situations are not really acceptable as a teacher. You don't want a child that you can't teach, and you don't want a child who's disrupting the classroom. So let's try and figure out why this is happening. Once we understand the why, is it because they need to fidget? Is it because there's something in the classroom that is just really hard for them? Um, is it something that is coming up next that they're stressed about? Are they always behaving a certain way because they know that something is coming up next and they can't stop thinking about it? Once we understand the why, then we can figure out how to help this child and figure out a way to do it in a way that actually tends to help the whole classroom rather than distract.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
One of one of the things we talk about, which was really kind of coined by Paolo, is this extreme ownership.
Yeah.
And as parents, we can often, even of a neurotypical child, and I really don't even know that any of us are neurotypical anymore, or that classrooms or even work environments are really set up great for neurotypical, because there's there's stressors. In my own child's classroom, it tends to be the kids that are more violent and the troublemakers, as far as just complete disregard of anything that's going on. They get all the attention, and then the rest of the kids are kind of left to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
um how do you not be that parent, while we're all probably willing to be that parent? How do you be that parent that actually is heard and is able to access resources and affect change, versus just, constantly complaining or going to the school or trying to have your child change a behavior? Do you have any tips on where people can start that process, or the most successful ways to approach principal or board of education or the teacher directly?
Yeah. That's such an important question because um, it really depends on so many different things. And I hate that answer, but that's so often the answer. It depends. Um, because there's so many things that go into this, right? There is your school district and what their approach is. There's a specific school, the leadership in the school, the teacher that your child has in their classroom. Then there's your home as well. There is the knowledge that you come with, and even knowing to ask the questions, and even knowing what you can or should ask for, understanding why your child is struggling, if your child is struggling. So there are so many things that are variables in this equation. But I will say a few key things that are important. One is, if you have any concern, then assume there's reason to be concerned. Now, the reason to be concerned may be within your child, it may be within the classroom, it may be so many different things. But just start questioning and paying attention. Listening to your kid is the first and most important thing you can do, and giving them a safe space. And then beyond that, in terms of being an advocate for your child, um, my my motto for everything is err on the side of kind. So no matter what mistakes we make, and we'll make so many along the way, let's try to err on the side of kind. Always assume, take an approach of kindness. You get more, you win more, and you feel better afterwards. So much better. Um, making a connection and assuming that the teacher in the classroom is doing their best. It may not be good at all what they're doing, but assuming that they're doing their best with what they have and what they know, um, is a good place to start, even if they don't know. And that's okay. I mean, that happens. We're human. It could be a teacher that is the worst person for your child. But just going and assuming that they're doing the best they can and they have good intentions. Same thing with the principal. And then finding an advocate. So, advocate can be a lot of different things for different people. Most school districts, at least in the US, do have some sort of special education parent support network, one way or another. There are special education advocates. There are coaches like me. Some of us are online, some in person, some both. And that's a great place to start, just to figure out where you are and what's available to you as a parent, because different people have different things available to them. You may be the parent who needs an advocate to be your voice because you're neurodiverse yourself and you can't figure out the system to begin with. So how are you going to fight a system that you just don't understand, and a communication system that you can't function with? So hiring an advocate can be a great avenue for you. It may be, just finding someone who can hold your hand as you go into meetings. You're allowed to bring someone in, even if it's just a support person or if it's someone speaking for you. So it really is trying to understand who you are and what you're capable of, and who your child is and what you think they need, and doing it with kindness.
I was smiling the whole time you were talking because I have the complete opposite approach. I think that's, but it's just been my experience.
Yeah.
I've experienced, at least with my kids. I've had to be an arsehole. I've had to go in. I've tried the nice approach. I've had to go in guns blazing, and it's the only way things get done. But to that point, you can't just go in screaming and shouting. You have to go in with a purpose and knowing exactly what you want. And I completely agree. There's a lot of resources that you should seek out if you do need help with this kind of thing. Of course, in my kind of radical ownership idea, I love to make sure that I can educate myself as much as I can on a topic. But to your point, some people may not have the resources or the time. So just seek out what you need to bring your knowledge up, or go in with someone that has that knowledge for sure. But this, I mean, it's the beauty of a show like this, right? Is we've got two completely
Yeah.
different approaches to it, and we've both accomplished the same thing for our kids. So
Oh,
it's
and
great
don't
to
get me
hear.
wrong. I definitely agree
Yeah.
that there are times you need to battle. A
Yeah.
hundred percent. 100%. Yeah. And I've definitely gone down that route. And but that doesn't mean that that's where I start.
No,
And
I approach the
if I
caveat with that.
go,
I've definitely,
yeah.
you assume positive intent. Give them a
Hmm.
chance. But unfortunately, people are just lazy. They don't want to have to make an accommodation for your kid, because that means they're opening the door to have to do that for 5 other kids now, and that's going to make their job more difficult. But
Hmm.
so no one's going to advocate for your kid more than you. So yeah, I definitely agree with a ton of what you said there. And I wanted to actually just kind of touch on, I feel like there's a lot of
Yeah.
overlap between the work you two do. And I'm wondering if there's any kind of uh, correlation with some of the disc profile and the neurodivergent people. Is there tendencies that you tend to see from each of those, or what are your guys' experience with that kind of thing?
That's such an interesting question because as Maya was talking, my brain always goes to disc. When anytime I hear about communication, or it really is either lack of communication or the ways that we communicate, the way that we receive information, the way that we make decisions, that's all just communication. And neurodivergent or neurotypical, the best way to communicate is when you can understand how someone else receives information. And really, I always hate to say this, but it becomes, when you're great at communicating, your intention has to be coming from a good place because it is the highest form of manipulation. So when I can understand how you receive information and I can tweak my delivery of it to get my desired outcome, I'm always checking, or anytime I'm training someone or working with someone in DISC, like, if I hear you use this for bad, you're going to have to answer to me. So that concept of understanding how other people give and receive information, ultimately it comes down to a win for the teacher, for the team leader, for the person, for the parent, when you can make these adjustments and understand, because then you can get your desired outcome so much quicker from the person that you're there to help grow. And as a room of full of coaches here, our number one mission in life is to, one, create a safe space so that two people can grow, whether that's our from a baby. You know, my most recent client is 76, starting over, you know, in her life, not by choice in some things. So I would be interested in having continued conversation and potentially even looking at some side-by-side assessments. And I don't know what assessments exist in the neurodiverse world, but having kind of some case studies where people take one assessment and then also take the DISC and see where we start seeing some similar patterns come out.
Yeah, it's interesting because um, when I was listening to another recent episode that you guys had about listening and communicating, I think I texted you about that one. That there's so much of what you were talking about with regards to specific examples of challenging communication. I was like, in that we talked about this before we started recording about how I've been having these conversations in my head with you guys as I'm listening to to the episodes. So in that one, I was really kind of um, hearing a lot of neurodiverse
Mhm.
ways of communication in many of the examples that you gave. Um, and I think one of the things that when I talk about a neurotypical world, so a lot of these types of assessments really are done mostly on and around neurotypical communication.
Mhm.
And when we, in the world of, it's within the neurodivergent community, these conversations are mostly around ADHD and autism, um, around different forms of communication. So when when we think of autistic communication, it's not that most of the focus is on teaching autistics to communicate in a
Mhm.
way that works for neurotypicals. Neurotypicals don't necessarily have to learn how to speak with autistics. It's a very one way world. Um, and I think that's a pity
Mhm.
because there's so much wonder and so many amazing places that you can go if you learn both forms of communication. It's very much like if you were to travel to a different country, and everybody has to learn to speak English as
Mhm.
opposed to you learning to speak whatever language it is that you're going. And you miss out on so much if you don't learn another language. You miss out on so much of the way of thinking, of the communication, of all of these things. Um, and within autistic communication, it's a different form of communicating. It's not wrong. It's not bad. It's not non-existent as um, many people I think are taught. It's there. It's just different. And so there's like an example of this is the idea of oversharing, which is something that happens a lot with ADHDers, or spilling out a lot of information on a special interest when it comes to autistics.
Mhm.
It's kind of like if you ask an autistic person a question about their special interest, you may end up drinking from the fire hose because you're speaking their love language. Hearing about their special interest allows them to connect to you. So I do think it is really interesting to think about communication with regards to neurodiversity, because there's so many different ways of communicating, and when we allow for them, then we can grow so much, especially if we're thinking about organizations and bringing the most out of the staff that we have working and really bringing them their best self forward.
Yeah, it's really funny you say that. Years ago, I had this client who was definitely on the spectrum. Not someone we ever talked about. He was a little older than me, and I would have been in my late 20s at the time. And he was one of those oversharers, talks your ear off about things that you had no interest in. But I I became interested because he had such a deep knowledge of it all. And I
Yeah.
remember this woman came up to me. She was a member at the gym. She came up to me after one of our sessions, and he also talked very loud. He didn't have much social cues or anything, but she came up to me and said, "Oh, you're so patient with that young man." And I know she meant it as a compliment, but I remember being a bit insulted, just to the sense of like, I'm just listening, like nothing special happening here. I'm just accepting him for who he is, and this was before I even had children.
Yeah.
And you're right. People don't, and I think it's mostly due to a lack of education around the subject, or around, there's a bit of a taboo about it. And I witness that a lot with people when they try and talk with my younger son. I'm like, I kind of sit there laughing, like he's not going to respond to you. Just your tone and the way you're talking to him, like you're trying to talk to him like he's a neurotypical kid. That's not going to work. It's really interesting, but I think more needs to be done to educate people on different ways of talking. I think we'll see a huge improvement throughout, the spectrum of life, work, home, of everybody getting to communicate better for sure.
Well, we need
100%.
Google Translate for neurodiversity, right? Because it's a perfect example of going to another country. And I guess yes, most of the world does learn English, but a lot of the world doesn't, especially in the smaller, more really special, unique places. So if you want to get the inside scoop, if you want the local customs, if you want to know the special things about that place, other than where is the bathroom and how much does something cost, we have to learn how to listen. And then watch all the nonverbal. I mean, I have successfully ordered food in Italy and France, and neither I didn't speak French or Italian to that level, and they didn't speak English, and I still got what I wanted, and that was all through pointing and smiles and body language, which I know can also be not what we're typically looking at when we see body language in neurodiverse versus neurotypical.
Yeah.
So where do we start? Right, for someone like me, and I it's very taboo for me a lot because I have an issue with labels, and then I have an issue with words, and I never want to offend, because we've kind of gone into this world where we've created unsafe spaces that if we say one word wrong, even when the best, most kind and loving intentions, we have just offended an entire community, and we are, the worst things.
Yeah.
So where are safe places to, if you know this answer, if you have thoughts, either of you, safe places to either start understanding and being able to ask questions, or for someone that's, much more educated on this, where are the resources? Where do we start? Where can we go?
I love everything about that question. So first of all, in terms of labels, I hear that a lot, especially when it comes to getting a diagnosis. I hear this mostly from parents, and people kind of shying away from sharing diagnoses, or just being open about them, worrying about the label. Now, everyone is going to get labeled. 100%. That's how we that's how we understand the world as people. We are going to put labels on things, and then we're probably going to disagree on the labels that we have on things. Are avocados a fruit or a vegetable? What
Fruit.
about corn? Like, even things as simple and supposedly straightforward as that, you are going to get very you're going to get people who have very strong opinions on whether it should be a fruit or a vegetable, and that is really important to them.
Paolo's like, it
And
doesn't matter, just don't eat it because it's not meat.
You can have avocado. It's a fruit.
so I think that it, labels are important, and we have to assume that we're going to get labeled. We all do it as soon as we meet someone. The moment somebody opens their mouth, anything that comes out of their mouth, we are going to attach labels. Now, if we think of a child who is misbehaving in a classroom and running amok and always cutting people off, and maybe they're even the bully in the classroom, then they have so many labels on them, right? Of someone who can't listen, someone who's a bad kid, or a bully, or any of those awful labels. Whereas if you put a label of ADHD on that kid, then it's kind of like saying, if I take my glasses off, then I'm ignoring what's written on the board. But if I put my glasses on, then suddenly I'm a good student. So when you put an appropriate label, a label that actually fits, then you can help the child. You can say, this is a kid who needs to move. This is a kid who is feeling unsafe in the classroom. We see this a lot with so many different types of neurodiversity, of neurodivergent people of any age, where the space they're in is simply not safe for them. So if we're talking about being in a meeting, okay, and how you should act in a meeting at the workplace, the way that we behave in that meeting, and I know that you talked about this again in that masculine feminine conversation that you had, we often have to put on a mask because we think we have to behave a certain way to be heard. We have to behave a certain way to be addressed properly. We have to maybe the space is not safe for us. And that's a whole, other attached conversation for many, many different reasons. So looking at the people around us, and when you ask where to start, I'll go back to err on the side of kind. Let's assume that the person we're talking to has reasons for the way that they're behaving that I will never know. And that no label that I can have can really fully allow me to walk in their shoes, because I can't. Even if we share the same diagnosis, we haven't lived the same life. We don't have the same internal experience. And so asking can be really helpful, and creating a safe space. And so that can start for me with just being open about myself and saying, I can't assume that anyone will share with me what they need if I won't share my needs. And so starting off saying, I often need to fidget. I need to do it. if a certain type of fidget that I'm using is bothering you, please let me know. I have a whole collection. Um, if you start fidgeting by doing this with your pen, then I'm probably going to ask you to stop because then I won't hear what you're saying. All I can hear is the pen. It's just true. Or anything else that kind of, the more we share about what our needs are, one, we're um, we're expecting people to do as we do, not just as we say. We're living and behaving what we're expecting from others. And we're setting an example. We're creating a safe space to say, I need straightforward information. I need feedback because I'm going to assume you hate everything I do unless you tell me otherwise. And if you tell me straightforward that you hate it, I won't be offended. I know. And I know that you can tell me. Whatever it is. The clearer we are about what we need, the better the chances that someone else will feel comfortable. And also opening it up and saying, I want to make this a safe space. I know that some people need to move. Some people need to hide behind a computer to feel safe. Some people need to write or draw or take notes. Some people, if they're asked to take notes, they won't be able to concentrate on the conversation and have any inputs because they're just concentrating on taking notes. I'm aware that we're all completely different. And so let's try to have, just like we would go to a restaurant and we need something for us vegetarians, vegans, and meat eaters. Let's have the same kind of buffet at the meeting that allows us all to pick and choose the way that makes sense for us and the way that we need to work. Does that answer?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. And I completely agree. I think the trying to avoid labels just creates even more of a taboo around it. And, as humans, we like predictability, right? Like I need to know if I'm in the presence of someone that I don't have anything to worry about. So if I know that, hey, this person has autism or this person has ADHD, and that's the reason that they're doing some of the things they're doing, I can be at ease with that. And that allows me to create that safe space for them. So it's almost doing a disservice to the person that we're putting that quote unquote label on, because we're preventing anybody giving them a safe space to be themselves, because we're creating this whole taboo around, well, what do we call them? Call them whatever you want. Call me whatever you want. I don't care. I'm not going to be offended.
I'm hearing labels that are empowering, using the label as empowerment, not as a judgment and not as an excuse. Um, I'm back to children. I'm always very attuned to where I hear people being like, you're bad, you are bad, you are this, you are that, handing children labels that never belong to them, and then seeing us as adults where we've carried these things through, we've taken on identities that were never ours to begin with, and have become limiting beliefs or things that are no longer serving us. So I'm always highly aware of that. And as a coach, anytime I hear a client go, I am lazy, I am stubborn, I am whatever it might be, I'm my spidey senses go off, and I always check back in there, like, is this a label, is this an identity that's serving them? And sometimes even the negative ones are serving them. Or like, I'm terrible at tech. Well, you made it on the Zoom call, you have a cell phone, but they'll almost use it as a crutch instead of empowering. So what I heard was labels through empowerment. I love the thought of, you know, we're going to get a label anyway. So such an interesting, again, you do this for me a lot, Maya, like just a different way of thinking about things that I'm very, really set on. And I'm like, okay, interesting.
I do want to add to that,
Yeah.
and sorry if you were starting to head in a different direction, but with regards to labels, I do think it's also important to allow people the space to not own a
Mhm,
label,
mhm,
and
mhm.
to not be ready to share and not be ready to put it out there, because that's part of not knowing where their safety is, and what has brought them to a situation where they feel safe or don't feel safe.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Some of
a huge one too.
some of the most unsafe places I have felt as vegan have been in vegan forums because now with the label, oftentimes people they look for like an all or nothing. If you claim a label or you're labeled, they then want you to fit into this their perfect box definition of that label.
Mhm.
And this is different than neurodiversity, but similar. And like I really shunned using the word vegan because I honestly still have some leather in my closet. I have horses. I've ridden horses before. I'm not against that. Now, I'm not for all forms of riding, but there's a lot of things that I do that would not be considered vegan. Um, so I think I'm hypersensitive to labels. I'm hypersensitive to this all or nothing notion. We don't allow people room to explore within a label or within
Mhm.
a self-identified um, title. I've also seen people move out of the veganism and go back to eating meat, and I've seen them basically be murdered 20 times. I was like, yes, another one came over.
Back to the dark
Uh,
side.
we don't allow that space, and I've seen people get, just quote unquote, like, murdered, canceled online. Like it's now all of a sudden everything they did is no longer valid. Um, that's something that I really always value about my relationship with Paolo and all of our guests as well is that we all really respect having different opinions and different thought processes. And most of the time, we still have the same desired outcome for ourselves, for our families. It's just different ways of going
Mhm.
about it. So, um, creating this safe space is something that is important to us so that we can have conversations like that. And we really like to have our audience think about, where in your life have you maybe shut down your thoughts or the possibilities of something different? Where are you no longer having exploratory conversations? Where are you immediately shutting down if someone brings something up? And those are the places we want people to turn back into. When you're having the knee jerk reaction, when you said to me, lying is integrity, I don't know what the heck you said. We got to go back to it because I was like, what the heck? No, it's not. I was like, knee jerk reaction, karate chop. Like, no, I do not agree with that. And then I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Why am I responding like this? One, two, let me like take a deep breath and let me hear what she has to say. And I thought it was so interesting. And I don't even know if remember if you remember what that was. um but we like our audience to be able to take action. So I'd like to hear what Paolo says and what you have to say, Maya. Is like, mine would be, look at where you're putting up a brick wall in your life to learning more and exploring more, and find someone to have a conversation and really just listen and be open to a different perspective. Doesn't mean you have to agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine would be, and I believe it's a lot of what you coach, Maya, just lean into your strengths. I think we have this tendency to try and work on our weaknesses too much,
Yeah.
but in reality, that's not really going to serve. Much rather get my strengths as strong as they can be versus bring up a weakness to an average level. I just think focus on what you're really. Maybe you're not great at being social. Fine, that's fine. But what you're really good at is researching something and then putting it into a great document that's going to tell everybody what you've learned. So just lean into what you're good at, who you are, and don't worry so much about what you're not good at or who you're not.
Mm. Find places where you can work in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so a couple things that with regards to like not being social and yes, being good at um, research, I think something to really pay attention to in terms of identifying your strengths and leaning into them, and all those definitions that that you were talking about, that you have about yourself. Um, Maybe I'm not good at being social in this setting. So that doesn't mean I'm not good at being social. That means that I need different type of setting to be social. I need to be social with my people. Or maybe in order to be really productive at my research, um, I need a different physical setting. Or this specific topic is really just not interesting to me. That doesn't mean that I can't be a good student. That doesn't mean that I can't be a fantastic academic. That doesn't mean I can't be amazing in the workplace. It just is, like you said, finding my strengths and honing in on them, in order to really be able to bring the best out of myself. It's just like, um, in a relationship, we want to be with a partner or a friend who brings out the best in us, that we like who we are with them. And I think that's a huge part um, of kind of finding our strengths and what comes out in them. Um, and with regards to labels, labels change. Nothing has to be forever. We grow as people, we grow as a society, um, and our definitions grow. I mean, even if you look at the DSM and available diagnoses, up until I believe it was 2013, a person couldn't be diagnosed as both autistic and ADHD at the same time. That was not an option in terms of diagnoses. And um, now we realize that so many people are. And ADHD is a very more and more common label that we're seeing more and more. That's probably going to change again because we're changing and we're growing, and that's the whole idea of learning.
Now, is
So,
there a number of tabs that you could have open on your monitors that would automatically qualify you as ADHD? Because I think I may need to self-diagnose myself.
I think that question alone.
as many as
Sorry,
your
had to
computer
throw
can
that in
handle, as much as your laptop can handle. No, it's
there.
funny you mentioned that about the social thing there, because that's something I've really come to terms with in the last year or so. Just I know how I am. I am not comfortable going to networking things where I'm the only person. I'm not good with small talk. I don't have time to bullshit. But if you put me in a one-on-one or a small group setting, I love going deep. I don't like going wide. I like going deep. Keep your minds out the gutter, Tara. And
Please.
and
I could say so much and I will say nothing right now.
the it took me a while to get over that. I felt like a bit, there was some like, shame and guilt of like I should be good at networking. You know, I'm an entrepreneur. I should be good at this. But
Shoulds.
why shouldn't I?
Yeah.
That's not what I'm good at.
No.
Yeah,
You got to stay out of the shoulds.
Yeah.
we do. And find
But
what
I
we're
do
good at.
think yes, and that's the key right there. How we can take ownership of it, and when we were often people think that they're in love with someone else, but they don't actually love the other person. They just love the way the other person makes them feel because there's parts of you that are coming out that you're experiencing that you really like and that you're like, wow. And that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you're not in love with the person or developing that for that person, but often it starts with how that person makes you feel. So recognizing, gosh, where am I the happiest? When do you have the most joy? When do you feel most energized? What are you doing? What environments are you in? Start to jot that down and then look to how can I recreate that in my daily life? And also the opposite. When do I feel most drained? Where am I, not at my best? And then, okay,
Yeah.
who am I around? What's happening when those are happening? And then starting to set yourself up for success by avoiding those scenarios and situations where you can. And if there's the things that can't be avoided, how can you reframe them? Whether that's in your mind, is there something in the environment that can be adjusted that, helps you counterbalance that. So again, we're always about self-empowerment and owning our own happiness and success. And whether it's a label, whether it's a challenge that we're dealing with, really looking at, okay, what part do I have control over? How can I take action? What resources do I need to get around me? That's why you always hear us asking about what resources are available, whether it's people or systems or AI or the internet.
Yeah.
We are getting close to time here, and so I want to make sure that if Paolo has another specific question or there's something that you really want to add, I do want to make sure that we make it crystal clear about how people can connect with you. And I know you serve a super wide range of types of clients. So before we get too far gone, make sure we wrap up with that. This is like my gentle reminder to us very squirrel people at the moment.
Yeah, no more questions from me. I definitely would love to have you back on again, so I think we can go a bit deeper into some other topics and whatnot. I think you're a breath of fresh air. I think you've got such good insights into just how the world works in general. Just from our short time together, I've definitely picked that up from you. So really appreciate you joining us. And like Tara said, if please share with the audience where they can find you. I'll do my best to remember to put it in the show notes so it's easily accessible.
Thank you. Yeah, I would love to come back on again. This was really, really fun. A great first step into ever doing podcasts. So thanks for making me feel so comfortable and welcome. I had a great time. I had one thought before I kind of share contact. Going back to the idea of safe spaces and what you were talking about, how we love and how we grow with the way that other people make us feel. I think a huge part in a safe space is always asking ourselves whether we're doing the same thing for the person across from us, and whether we're only seeing them kind of like the old idea of gentlemanly love of the woman on the pedestal, but not actually seeing her. So that same space of, is the person across from me getting the same? Am I allowing them to be their best as well? Or am I the only one who feels really good in this space? Or do they need to mask for me to feel this way? Or do they have the space to be their authentic self as well? Yeah, so in order to contact me, the best way is just my website. It's neurozestycoaching.com. So neuro like the brain, zesty like the zest of a lemon, and coaching.com.
Awesome. Well, we're
Thank you
definitely
both.
going to do this again. The time flies by, but that's when you're having fun. And I had fun. I knew you'd bring amazing insight. Thank you so much for your perspective. And I'm watching Paolo's face as you're talking and seeing his little subtle reactions that maybe I know. So I know that there is much deeper of a conversation to be had. So we will set that up.
I would love that.
And perfect. As always, friends, until next time, bye for now.